Coming up on UGTV, Standing Committee Meetings of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. We begin with a meeting of the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. This will be followed by the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee.
Started, and I will call the meeting of Public Works and Safety Standing Committee to order. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting, particularly staff who are staying after on a snowy evening. We appreciate that. Public comment is welcome, and anyone wishing to speak on any item may do so when that item is up for discussion. You will have up to 3 minutes to state your comments. I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Roll call: Bryant.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Bynum.
Here. Next, we have approval of minutes from our...
Approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. And we will move into the items on the agenda. The first item is measurable goals with emergency management.
Does that matter me?
Gordon, why don't
Says
you
Matt
kick
May.
it off and introduce Matt, and we'll get going.
Thank you.
So Matt's going to, and his team are going to present on changes in the EF8
After we talked about
position, which is significant.
Okay.
But I wanted to present to you guys sort of the high-level aspirational goal for emergency management. As you guys know, we sort of lay out these aspirational goals for you all to play with, and if we need to come back and refine the language, we will. So I basically changed some language, Matt, out of what's in our budget, and just said the goal of emergency management is to mitigate, prepare for, respond to, and/or recover from all possible hazards that create a state of emergency in Wyandotte County. And there's things that the department does that reflects their ability to do all of these things, which would be our measurements.
Are there any questions or additions. Read it again since I don't have my glasses on.
The goal of emergency management is to mitigate, prepare for, respond to, and/or recover from all possible hazards that create a state of emergency in Wyandotte County.
How has that changed? It hasn't, has it? It's pretty much it.
Well, it's aspirational and pretty high now.
That's what I'm saying. We haven't changed our goals, have we?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. We always want to do that. That's
That's what
that's
I mean, I'm
a that's
just
a
like-
life cycle mantra in the emergency management world for years.
Well, you had me worried there for a minute. I
No.
thought maybe we hadn't been trying to do that.
No, we're always going to do that. But what I want to pick on is a couple of specific elements that help us get to that. And so the last time I came to you folks, I talked about our citizen engagement, and this year we're going to add our partner engagement. So if I can, I'll just go through these slides real quick. I know we're all looking to get out of here. The reason citizen engagement matters is because it provides an awareness of the EM programs throughout the community, educates them on their responsibility, have their own safety. The citizen still has a responsibility to prepare themselves from my perspective, and what we want to do is give them the tools and the education to do that. We want to give them an outlet to support their fellow citizens, and an example of that is the CERT teams, for example. The CERT teams get education that will help themselves during an event, but it's also, if they're not impacted directly, they form an organization that will go out and find others who are and help them.
Okay, so acronyms always.
Sorry.
That. Thank you.
Community emergency response teams. These are Joe Citizen who wants to do something helpful, and we give them the tools and the expertise to do that.
Thank you.
And we're going to start a new class in that on February 25th. So we'll have a new group going through that. Last but probably least important from my perspective, but still important to be aware of, is it a statutory requirement of the emergency management program within the state of Kansas. So that's one of the reasons to fulfill that as well. Here's just a couple of pictures from events that we have participated in. The one in the upper right is where we partner with our National Weather Service partners to do a weather awareness class. We used to call it a spotter class. It's really not that. It's really about being better aware and better prepared. And we're going to do that again this year. That is scheduled for February 14th. So we're going to have the second one out of the gate for the Metro to get done. I like to do them early. We had problems with scheduling where we were before out at the junior college. So we're still at the junior college, but we moved over to the tech center so we could get to that space and present there. And I think that's going to work better for all of us. Traditionally, in the past, before I got here, we were doing about 5 or 6 of these kind of presentations a year to various civic groups. In 2015, we actually did 18, which was more than what I expected to do. And we're going to push that goal to 25 for next year. So just to give you a list, I won't read them all, but again, the Weather Symposium, which is an event in Douglas County, but our CERT teams and some other team members go over. That's more advanced weather awareness. The Weather Spotter presentation, like I said, we've done those. All sorts of folks you can see would do Boy Scouts, Red Cross. The smoke detector installs was really a very successful program. We did that twice this year, using our CERT teams to go out and canvass folks and put up smoke detectors. I know one of the 2 days total, the group put up 124 smoke detectors down in the Argentine neighborhood. It was really successful. Here's some more of the things that we went to this year. And so you can see we've been there. One group actually invited us back for a second round. We talked specifically, I kind of hit on some of the things they could do, like CERT as an overview. They wanted specifically more information about CERT, and we gave that to them in a second presentation. So that's the citizen engagement. The partner engagement is really where we're working with our partners. And tonight's an excellent example of that. With us behind me is Steve Hager. He's our regional hospital coordinator for the state for this area. And Steve and I have actually known each other for a long time, but we partner together to do things like this ESF8 presentation I'm going to give you in just a minute. It could be other EM offices. It would be a lot of NGOs, and by that I mean Red Cross, Salvation Army, Habitat for Humanity, all sorts of folks who can provide services both pre-event and post-event. And we work with them, we plan with them, so we know what their resources are, we know how to best utilize them after an event. And it's always good to have those personal, one-on-one, face-to-face relationships. And exercises, I think that's another key piece in our partnerships. We've done more of those this year than I think the department's had in recent memory, and I'm going to show you a list of those. So in 2015, these are the events we went through. Incident management team, that's where we support each other. So a group of emergency managers from, say, Western Kansas might come here and help us, because we never will have the number of people we need to actually run an event. We have to rely on each other. And likewise, we're willing to go to them. And so we partner together and we practice that. So we did a tabletop, the TTX, to your point about acronyms, that means tabletop exercise. The FSC is a full-scale exercise. That means we actually get out, do stuff, push, you know, if a truck's involved or communication vehicles involved, we actually get it out, turn it all on, and make it work. And so some of those are much more involved than others. The tabletop is probably a day. I'm looking for the civil support team one, the second one down there. That is, the civil support teams are an Army function that are designed to help the locals. And so that's what that team does. Knowing what their capabilities and ours are and how they mesh is really important.
So does that pull Fort Leavenworth in?
They are based out of Leavenworth and a combination of Leavenworth and Riley. So they're in both places. There's a team like this in every state. And so we can also pull from the 7th Civil, which is in Missouri at Leonard Wood. And so we actually, for that exercise, we had all 4 from what we call Region 7. So Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. We're all there. We're going to do this exercise. This was a 3-day exercise with a total of about 450 people involved out at the Speedway. It was a very elaborate exercise. And we were integral to that. Our fire department was a huge piece of that because of the hazmat components. We had live agents there, meaning we had things that really would set off a Geiger counter and those kinds of fun stuff. And we got the guys from Riley, their ordnance guys built us some fake bombs, but did real stuff. And so the comment that I heard from one of the Overland Park guys is those guys should be punished and never be allowed to build anything again. They built a really good one.
Scared them, didn't
Yeah, it was a cooler with a can on the top, and if you picked up the can, all of a sudden the stuff sprayed out of the bottom, and you don't know what that stuff is. It's very exciting. So there are a lot of robot work and things like that. So that's the kind of things we do. You can see that we did a bunch, and it was taxing on our department, but it's so educational when we can all work together and know what everybody else can do and what the party they bring to the party is really helpful. Already for 2016, this is where we are on our calendar. Gay Hall from the health department's behind me. You can see there's a couple of Ebola tabletops that we'll be participating in, and that are more for her. Again, that civil support team exercise, we're going to run that exercise again, but you'll notice there's a new element there. That's the tactical squads. So we're going to bring in the law enforcement guys and have them come out and practice with us. So they're going to do a takedown, but then they're going to find that they've got a bad chemical actor of some sort. Now the whole scene switches over to a hazmat, and they've got to practice that handoff, and that's part of what we're going to do this year. I'm actually going to be the exercise director for that exercise this year. So
The next to the bottom one, MECC, what does that stand for?
that's the Metropolitan Emergency Communications Council. What that is it's a sharing council between the served agencies. We would be one of those. And the amateur radio groups primarily, although there are other kinds of emergency communication groups out there, primarily there's about 20 amateur radio groups that provide emergency communications. And I also happen to be president of that organization. And so what we do is we do a region-wide emergency drill, and it's functional. We actually go out and do the stuff we're going to do. And typically we get between 100 and 125 participants, and we do it all what we call HC, or Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Process compliant. So it's done to a federal standard so that all those things can give us credit for doing them, because that helps with our grants. But it's really a great exercise. It's pretty unique across the country.
Are they tied in then with our new system?
Actually,
Or are they
they're separate.
extraneous from that because if our new system's down, we don't need them?
Exactly.
Okay.
Actually, they serve two purposes. One is as a replacement should we have a failure, and that's happened. If the phones fail, they're another great resource. I know that several times a hospital or the 911 system has failed for whatever reason. The last one I heard about was someplace else, but they had a case of the backhoe terrorists. The backhoe went and cut the phone lines coming into the 911 center. We're able to augment that. And it's not perfect replacement, but it's certainly better than nothing at all. And they can provide that resource. If our system were to fail in a way that I can't fathom and wouldn't want to even think about, but if it were,
Sorry.
I know, no, you got to think about that stuff. Then we could do that too. We could put these guys into the vehicles and have them respond with the officers if need be to be their communications tool. And most recently, during one of these simulated emergency tests, the City of Independence did exactly that with their fire department. They put the amateurs in with them in the fire trucks, and unless there was a life-threatening emergency, they relied on the amateurs' information and acted as if their public safety radios were non-functional. And they did a great job with that. That was under Chief Shees when she was there. Great job. So you can see, and we treat our speedway race weekends very much like an exercise for us. We have to. And we're actually going to set up on that civil support team exercise, we're going to set up the command center at the speedway just like we would for a race, so that we'll have all those capabilities there and practice that interplay so that we know how to do that. But I treat those 2 race weekends just like it's an exercise for us.
I'll probably give you a call some other time and talk to you about this livestock movement control thing, because I'm not really.
That one right now is just a workshop, but it will evolve sometime into a full-scale exercise. The state does this primarily, and they just finished one a month or so ago out in Manhattan. But it's really more important that they work on the border, because that's where you're going to do that stop movement. So it wouldn't matter where in the country. Let's say there's hoof and mouth disease. They're going to stop movement across the country and say, okay, everybody has to be checked. We have a process for doing that. What that workshop's going to do is we're going to talk it through with our other 2 county partners. So it'll be the 3 county metro Kansas counties, and we're going to talk about where we're going to put those checkpoints at. Do they still make sense? Because they're written into our plans now, and the state's providing a contractor that's going to rewrite that little piece of our plan, and we're going to adopt it in. So at some point I will bring it back to you folks to look at.
Because I understand it, as I understand it, we as a state are going to have to be more responsible for making sure that those issues are covered, because it's not going to be coming from the feds.
That's correct. And the state emergency management planner for ag is a good friend of mine, and she's doing a great job with that. She used to be at KDM at the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, and she moved over to agriculture, and she's putting this together for us. But she's doing this, we're actually the last ones to get done. All the rest of the border counties have been addressed, and they're doing it, I think, pretty sharply, in as much as we're only going to do one direction, right? If Missouri does the outgoing side and we do the incoming side, we will get them both stopped. We have a plan for what to do if we have any diseased animals and where they're going to go and how they're going to be dealt with. But then the state takes over. Other than a place to go with them, we don't have to worry about it. So we just tell the truck driver, take them up here.
Thank you.
Gotcha. We're on it. So that's what that workshop's all about. Any questions about my goals? I think that's pretty much it. Okay? Cool.
I think you're a department that always has your work cut out for you, so
Never seems to end.
no, I appreciate it. And I
Thank you.
also appreciate again, the staff that has stayed and been available. And your next, that item was information only at this point, and your next item is also Matt with Emergency Management, and he is going to share with us a proposed revision to the County Emergency Operations Plan.
Correct. The County Emergency Operations Plan has a provision in it that should we make any significant, and I highlight those words, changes to the plan, that we bring it to the commission. The problem for me is getting a good read on what significant is. So in your packets, you should have seen what I call a markup copy, a draft copy, so you have a feel for the work that went into this. I will tell you that if we tried to do all these ourselves, it wouldn't happen. This was primarily the work of Gay Hall and her team putting this together. We met here and worked through some of these changes, and we spent some time on it. But I'll tell you, they worked really hard to put this together. What I would like to ask of you folks is to take a look at this real quick, see the kind of changes that are in here. If you have any questions, both Gay and Steve are available to ask at that. Otherwise, we would just ask for that it's okay to proceed and give it to Mr. Bach to sign, or do you want to go ahead and move it to the full commission? It's really your call. I'm just trying to get a feel for what's significant.
Well, so my comment would be that I would feel better if the full commission got to vote on this. I mean, I have no problems with it personally, but I think it should come before the full commission for them to say okay on it.
So I believe that Commissioner Markley just reminded me that we can approve it, and it'll move to consent agenda
Okay.
on the full commission.
Yeah.
So is
If
that
they
your?
want questions, they can ask
Yeah.
questions at that time.
That's
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, so do I have a motion on the,
Second.
any other questions or comments? Any comments from the public, the non-existent public that's here tonight?
Well, now we're all public.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Roll call on the motion, please.
Roll call, Bryant,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Markley. Kane,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And that
Motion carries.
Thank you, and thank you very much
My pleasure.
to
Thank
you
for
and
the
all
time.
of your staff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
That-
As we transition, our next item is a presentation of candidate projects for the 2016 Federal Aid Transportation Grant, and we have Mr. Bill Heatherman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We wanted to continue a dialogue that we started in November about the upcoming grant applications for transportation work. As you recall, we submit those grants to the Mid-America Regional Council, and it does fund some of the both high-profile and sometimes not so high-profile but very important work that we're able to do on our transportation system. Brandon Grover on our staff has handed out a letter which is, I will talk about this particular project at the end of the program, project request. So we really envisioned this as 3 visits with the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee, so this is 2 of 3. Next month in February, we plan to bring you a resolution or resolutions asking for formal endorsement for the projects that we all, at that point, will be in the middle of writing applications for. We haven't done that particular step in the past, but it does allow us to have kind of a more firm statement of endorsement, and it also helps with our application package in communicating that to the grant committee. But to help provide some context, we're going to spend a little more time with how the grant process works at MARC, and then talk to you about the prime candidates that staff has identified as applicants for this round's projects. These next series of slides, about 3 or 4 slides, were all taken from a presentation that MARC staff themselves gave to Total Transportation Planning Committee at Mid-America Regional Council. So this outlines the overview. The call for projects will come out late this month, and that's for 3 different program areas. Surface Transportation Program, which is the largest pot of money and the most flexible. What's called CMAQ, which is Congestion Mitigation Air Quality. That's a very targeted set of funds and types of projects that can be done. And what used to be called the Transportation Alternatives Program, and in the latest highway bill has been adjusted. They're now just calling it a set-aside within the STP. But it's for more bike-ped-oriented projects, multimodal, quality of life, historical preservation. Those types of efforts actually have a set-aside so that they can compete within kind of the broader realm of transportation work. There will be a pre-application workshop. They always do that. We attend those, gives us a reminder of what's the same and what's changed in this upcoming round. And then they haven't published the deadline for the applications, but mid to late March. And I can tell you these applications are a lot of work to put together. So we have already started pulling our notes together. We will not be waiting for the pre-application workshop to begin our work on these applications, which is why tonight's conversation is important to you, because we've already sized up what we think we can realistically make application on. If there's any feedback, you know, the next couple of weeks is an ideal time for us to hear that feedback. And then a very long process ensues before the final decisions are announced by MARC in September and October. MARC staff take those applications and they crunch a lot of numbers, calculate a lot of scores. Then they present those scores to a series of committees that we have membership on that do a lot of discussion and evaluation of projects. There's a public input and engagement process that has grown. Certainly the last application round had some pieces to the outreach that was more planned and significant than before, and that's going to continue. So there's an opportunity for the public to go online and make comments on individual projects. There is also a large meeting that's held where more in-depth information is shared about projects and priorities can be taken. That works its way through these committee processes at MARC. The final outcome is a combination of the objective scoring criteria as well as kind of the judgment factors, discretion factors that the different committees have a role in. And it culminates in a recommendation that goes to the Mid-America Regional Council Board for approval. And once that's approved, then we get the notice that says, hey, you've got these projects and good luck to you. So this is just a little bit, after we apply, Mark's staff does some scoring. The different committees do evaluation. For the CMAQ program, I said congestion mitigation air quality, there is a specific committee called the Air Quality Forum that has special expertise, and they get a chance to chime in on those projects. But ultimately it does go, TTPC stands for the Total Transportation Policy Committee. That is a very large metro-wide committee. Commissioner Walters is our official representative to that, meets monthly and acts as the final recommending authority before final decisions go to the Mid-America Regional Council Board of Directors. So we're very active on that committee, and it's a very important part of the process. And then TIP and STIP, there's a lot of acronyms, if you hadn't noticed, as in all of our world in government. That is the formal document that states what projects are getting federal aid and what year they're getting them. And at any given time, if you can read the lingo, you can see what is planned in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the metro area and how much federal aid has been committed to those projects. And that also has its own public comment period. It's a very specific process under the federal rules that we follow to get our projects ultimately listed. Complete streets is a word we've adopted in our resolution of support. It's a very important word metro-wide and at Mid-America Regional Council. Mark has a policy to promote that we do the active planning that goes in these projects, make sure that we're considering all the different users, aren't taking a narrow view, as may have perhaps been the case in the past in terms of what about pedestrians, what about transit, what about freight movement, what about bicycling. And that also requires us to be more specific at the application phase about if we have any exceptions because some particular mode of travel is impractical, we need to declare that. Otherwise, the expectation is that we have provided reasonable facilities for all. And this is a lot of words on this slide, but all of this scoring is actually evaluated against a document that's called the Long Range Transportation Plan. And that plan is updated every 5 years. Sometimes it's a small update, sometimes it's a major rewrite. We have just finished what I would call as a medium-sized effort and has been adopted. And that is the document that really spells out what the region's goals is, as articulated through this process of representation by the member cities. And these are the kinds of words that are important in transportation planning and will be important for us to show in our grant applications. Accessibility, climate change and energy use, economic vitality, the environment, placemaking, public health, safety and security, system condition, and system performance. There's a scoring criteria, and in the end, we're going for about 130 points. It's a tough scoring criteria. In college, this would have been a tough class. You'd been lucky if you got a C. And all of those key words that we had before, but every one of those boxes actually represents, maybe 7 boxes of other information that we sit down and write, or data that we gather, or special evaluations of safety and capacity that we put together. So there's a lot of input that goes in and a lot of data gathering that we need to do. So with that, and I'll take any questions you have over the whole process, but I wanted to just show you the candidate projects that, based on all the input that we've received to date and various conversations and understandings from the past and planning efforts, this is what we believe are the prime candidates for us to pursue in this upcoming application round, subject of course to your input and feedback. We always really need to find one signature project under that STP fund that really tends to be a major arterial roadway work, And we have oftentimes pursued those in pairs or grouping. So State Avenue, if you recall, we did, one of those was federal aid, one was not, but we did those in pairs. Miriam Lane we're pursuing. We've done work on Parallel and Donahue with grants. We have made major beginning on Leavenworth Road with a project from 38th to 63rd Street, and we recommend that we continue that momentum through to the next leg, which we've defined as probably being best to go from 63rd to 78th Street. That project would look very similar to the project that we've been discussing with the community that's under design now. We also look for one good intersection project, there, especially for that category called CMAC. Tends to be a place where a good intersection project can come into play. 7th and Central is a very important relief point when there's congestion on I-70, and just the whole orientation of that intersection doesn't work well for the trucks that get diverted. We're also seeing more and more interest in the redevelopment and activity along Central Avenue, so the timing seemed good to have that be an intersection project that we pursued. Safe routes to school, we talk about that a lot. We've been very successful in an ongoing program. We believe one project application that packages two schools together is kind of the best structure for an application. And based on the readiness that has already happened, past studies, work with the school districts, it appears that really William Allen White West Middle School and Francis Willard Elementary might make the best package. I will say that at William Allen White, we do already have some amount of work planned in the last work, the last grant we received, but because of the size and number, it would only just be a bare beginning for what is a very high attendance area.
Bill, I know where West and William Allen White are, but Francis Willard, I just cannot conjure where, and I can't see it.
Right. Francis Willard is,
Sorry.
yeah, Orville. You caught me, Orville at
Thank
35th
you.
Street.
Thank you, okay.
Bikeway improvements fall under that special funding category, and given all the work that the Infrastructure Action Team with Healthy Community Wyandotte has done, and the success that we've seen with both Miriam Lane coming online as well as the planning for the 10th, 12th Street Bikeway, we would propose to also have one bikeway improvement, and it appears from the planning that has been done that the next best option that's ready to go would be something along the Metropolitan Strong Route between 7th and 42nd, as well as what we'd call connectors to try to connect to the Shawnee Drive Ridge and to Miriam Lane. We have not detailed out a route for that, but we wanted to get a consensus on the concept of where we put our efforts into. And then Justice Welker has also been working very heavily on transit-oriented improvements, and the next two projects here, KCATA is going to make a major effort to promote technology upgrades and looking at doing that in partnership with us and with the other communities with transit. The details are still being worked out, but we plan to be a co-sponsor, supporter of that application. And these are just pictures of the kinds of things that have been discussed. This is not a specific view of what will be in that grant application in terms of the details. And then we have also looking at sidewalk and pedestrian accessibility in the vicinity of our transit routes. And that is a type of application that City of Independence actually has made in the past and was awarded. City of Kansas City, Missouri is looking at making that application, and it fits within the regional concept for making transit more accessible. And again, we haven't detailed the specific locations yet, but we wanted to get a feedback on pursuing in this direction. And then we have one additional project that City of Roland Park is pursuing, and they've approached us asking for our support, and that would be to make improvements on Roe Boulevard itself. The letter that I handed out was provided to us from City of Roland Park, And I have Jose Leon, who's the Public Works Director for Roland Park, is here this evening, and I'm going to ask him to come and sit up here, say a few words about that project, and then he's available for any questions that might come. But with that, we would be open to any questions you have about this, and this list was included as a list in your staff packet.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to steal some minutes here of your time, commissioners and staff. City of Roland Park's going to go through the same process as Bill outlined for STP funds for Roe Boulevard project. If you take a look at the map that we provided for you, what we're looking to capture is Roe Boulevard in its entirety through Roland Park. The improvements that we'd like to make on Roe Boulevard. And we think it's important to reach out to neighboring communities when we do large projects like this to see if there's an opportunity for collaboration. So one of the things we did was we reached out to staff and just kind of began a discussion to see where this might fall in Wyandotte County's priority list, Kansas City, Kansas priority list. The one thing that we strive to do at Roland Park is to make infrastructure that is usable for not only our community but the neighboring communities as well. So with that said, we provided a letter for as much information as we could at this time and this map to go along with it, and I'm here for any questions.
Commissioner Markley.
Not so much a question, but just a comment. So as Bill mentioned, this all goes to various committees of the MARC board and then onto the MARC board of directors. So the beautiful part about any time we partner with another community is that adds to the number of people on those boards that are interested in the project. So that then we would get Johnson County commissioners and we would get Roland Park City Council people who are also there to help the project along. So it may not, I don't know that it technically goes into the scoring, but certainly it helps the project along in terms of just the number of supporters who are willing to stand behind it at that MARC board level.
That's a great point. Thank you. And I see in the letter that you're referencing kind of a redevelopment opportunity with regard to road improvement and then that maybe spurring on development. Am I reading this correctly? Is this what you're envisioning?
Right. One of the things that we had kind of discussed in our meeting with staff the other day was that we believe it's important for public infrastructure. It can kind of guide, private development opportunities. And with this area of Roe Boulevard, south of I-35, there's a property there on the southwest corner, I believe, right off I-35 and 18th Street or Roe Boulevard that is currently not developed at all. Sounds like there was some opportunity in the past and it didn't take place. So we believe that some improvements done on this stretch that's noted in red within Kansas City, Kansas would provide some opportunity.
And I have a general question on the list. The list is ranked in priority order, correct?
No, that's just, it's just a list of projects.
Okay.
They're kind of more maybe in size order or category order.
But that Leavenworth Road project is kind of, you spoke to it as kind of a signature project, so we do call that number one, right?
That is by far the largest and most visible one, but it was not intended to put these in a rank order.
Okay.
I like that rank, though.
Commissioner Johnson?
Bill, what is the psychology that goes into picking the projects? I mean, I'm sure you all have a laundry list of areas that need to be evaluated. And this might be a better offline conversation if it's too in-depth. But my second question is also, is there a sense of the total amount, dollar amount of these projects that we'll be putting in the application for?
There is all total for the Kansas side, because these monies do ultimately flow through the two states separately. All total for the Kansas side, I believe it was about $35 million. We represent about 17% of the population of the counties that are covered by this grant application. Each one of these funding sources has slightly different boundaries, so slightly different numbers. And it is always our intent to achieve at least a per capita share, but also to be very competitive so that we are submitting grant applications that rank highly. It is also not reasonable to assume that you're going to sweep the field, because every community has very important priorities, and the Mid-America Regional Council process does, in the end, try to make sure that there's equity across the field. So we try to make sure that we are very competitive and maybe beating the average by a little bit, and certainly not falling below what our per capita thought might be about those funds.
So about 6 million, if you look at it per capita?
Yeah, it comes out to about 6 to 7. And then in the end, you can only really count on the federal share to cover maybe about half of all that it takes to bring a project to the finish line. You hear about 80-20, but the reality is it's more like 50-50. So if we're talking about, you know, targeting 6 million of federal funds, we need 12 million of true project value to be in that candidate list.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Jeff Brandt.
My question is regarding the row project. You know, looking at it, if KCK owns about 800 feet of that, and if I remember getting off on that exit quite often, that you're going up a hill, there's a big hill on both sides. So I can't imagine that a lot of it, the way it sits right now, much could be done with it as far as commercial or retail or anything, but is there a setback so far from the interstate before any business could be in there, number one? And number two, would this project involve in a way that there would be access for a turn lane, you know, if you do put in retail or commercial there? I mean, you have to be able to get, I mean, you're coming off and you're right there on a merge lane. So would it be widened or something so that it would give access?
So, Mr. Bryan, I think the short answer is we're not proposing to specifically change or address the characteristic of future development, and right now this is a concept. The City of Roland Park has, I think, a very overarching view of what they would like to accomplish on the majority of their share, and by cooperating with them, we would have a chance to address some of our maintenance responsibilities, as well as create a transition of look and feel so that it was, you know, certainly complementary to Roland Park's goals, kind of a responsible, good neighbor approach, but could also be relatively modest. And we don't have any particular proposals working their way that we know of on the economic development side, but there is that tract of land. There is there has been some look at the accessibility in the past, and in the design we would make sure to pay attention to what kind of modifications, you know, might come at the time of a development. But I don't want to mislead and think that somehow this is definitely tied to something that's happening there. This was really, for us, a chance to be consistent with the timing that Roland Park has for what is a far more substantial reinvestment that they plan on their portion.
Aesthetics, pretty much then.
And, yeah, absolutely.
Aesthetics
and I
and
think this goes-
condition.
Yeah, it goes back to some of the, when Bill brought this forward to me to discuss, I said, well, this is good because Commission's been talking about entryways into the community. This gives us an opportunity to partner with Roland Park to help improve one of our central gateways into the community that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's really kind of a unique opportunity for us there.
So do we currently have or know of plans for an ATA bus line that will run? I mean, we currently have one, right, that runs down Row to Argentine?
The Route 107 is undergoing
That's right.
both a modification and a separate MARC project from the last round. And so it does now co-locate, or will soon co-locate, a portion of its route on Row Boulevard going south to the Mission Transit Center and back out
It
again.
already does.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It was sometime in this time frame when they were going to make the operational change. Jose, do you know?
Yeah, I do actually. Thanks, Bill. On January 4th, KCATA added 9 bus routes in Roland Park, and I'm unsure the number on Roll Boulevard specifically, but I know that it was, and we mentioned in the letter as well, to improve the access or bus routes to KU Medical Center. So it goes through Roe Boulevard and down through County Line Road as well.
Okay.
So any other comments or questions? I don't see any sign of discomfort with anything you've brought us, and I think we have an appreciation for the list that you've created, including, I'm getting a sense of appreciation for the partnership. So there's no action required on this item. This would be the opportunity, I think, for us to say that we didn't care for something you've brought forward. I'm not hearing that from the members of the commission. I would express that I like the list. Yes, Commissioner Philbin.
I believe you're looking for maybe a comment of support for this list, or not.
I think we're primarily just opening the dialogue. Ultimately, in the past, it has been the county administrator who gives the direction of the director of public works. Yes, that list looks consistent with, you know, all that has gone before. We will be asking for a formal endorsement, but we have, in listening to the commission, tried to create more steps along the way to share this information and allow for more feedback. So I would say, as this committee is the one with jurisdiction, if you want to provide either comment tonight, or if you want to provide Mike Tobin and I comments about this, it'll be next month when we come and bring the formal resolution. But that would be kind of late in the process to find out that we completely missed the boat.
I'm in agreement. I would like to talk to you and Mr. Tobin about the process and just from my general understanding as we go forward in future years and whatnot. So I'm fine with it.
Thank you.
Be very happy to do so.
All right, excellent. And before you get away, Mr. Leon from Roland Park, thank you for coming out on a night like this. I think we all appreciate that. And
Drive safe.
please drive safely.
Thank you.
Yes, and Mr. Etherman, before we let you go, because I think you're done for the evening with us, are you? No, you're not done. Yay, you get to stay, but before we move to the next item, you know, this isn't the only thing you do, and I just really appreciate, this is a detailed level of work, it's an inordinate amount of work for you and your staff. It is appreciated by this commission and noticed. Also, just with regard to Mr. May, who spoke before you, those emergency management documents that it appeared that we glossed over were probably 30 or 40 pages of revisions and updates, and I just want you all to be aware that we know the level of work that you're performing for this community, and we really appreciate it. So that being said, the next item for you and your staff is stormwater enhancement projects, and this is exciting.
My favorite topic.
It's Commissioner Markley's favorite topic.
Thank you again, Commissioner Bynum. And on behalf of our staff, let me say thank you for those kind words. You are correct. The staff work very hard. We have several of them here this evening, and I know they appreciate hearing that. So thank you. So the next item has to do with stormwater policy, and we've touched on this at various meetings. And we are not. It's an information item tonight for the same reason as the other. We wanted to kind of check in, make sure you felt we were on the right path, and explain the pathway that we thought we would go forward. You know, each year we get requests for a variety of improvements, and the more clear and formal that process we have for those that are discretionary and of high cost, the better it is for all of us to manage expectations, as well as creating a way forward for projects that need to be considered. And at the request of commission, we've considered improvements specifically on the storm drainage side. Storm drainage are perhaps some of the more difficult to prioritize because the problems are often more hidden, but they're very serious, and the need is quite great, to be honest. So a process that allows us to have an orderly and clear and transparent method of talking about those projects, they are also quite expensive. And so given the need and the expense, we have to be very methodical and judicious about how we undertake and bring those forward. What we have tonight is really a memo that we provided, and kind of summarize some of the key points here in the slides. But these are just some pictures of the problem that we have out there. We have old infrastructure. That was concrete line. Maybe that was put in by the city and officially acknowledged by us as such, or maybe that was, something else. And now there's some confusion over who's even supposed to be maintaining that. Silt, vegetation, lot shifts and moves out there in the real world, and we have to keep up with it. And in the end, when it ain't working, every so often you get a chance to see that. And that is very distressing, can be very dangerous, certainly can create a lot of property damage. And we as a community, do want to be able to have a means of handling those. And when those floodwaters recede, it's amazing how much they took with them and what they shifted around. And so the issues related to stream erosion and stream meander can be just as distressing as flooding if it's your home that's threatened, or in our case, if it's our infrastructure that that we need to protect. So what are we proposing to do about that? What we've outlined in the memo is a process that would have us maintain a priority list and bring that to you each year for a conversation. We need to keep that list to a manageable size, which means we need to really be able to focus it on those things that are a priority. We would ask this committee, as the standing committee with jurisdiction, to be the one who vets and listens to the information on those projects that have been brought up, obviously on behalf of the commission as a whole, with ultimately recommendations going to the entire board. We actually had put together a scoring matrix in the past. It never took off as far as using it, but it was as good as anything else that we could think of. And certainly for beginning, it seems to cover all the right bases. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we want to use this one. After a couple of years, we each may see some things it doesn't quite cover, or we may wonder ourselves why different weighting is there, but we'll learn that together as we move forward on this process. We would ask that we then look to select projects that are buildable in about the 3 to 5 year time frame, both to give time for design but also to fit the budget, but to leave some money unallocated in about that 4th and 5th year of the CMIP, so that every year there's some predictability as to how much we've budgeted towards this issue, but that you're actually selecting projects that are more in the 3 to 4 year time frame ahead. That way, every year the committee has some room to exercise its discretion, and when we're talking to neighborhoods, they don't necessarily have to feel like it's guaranteed 5, 6, 7 years before anything could happen. That seems to allow you a window to respond each and every year based on what you are seeing, the information relative to those priorities. And then if we find out that we want to be putting more or less money in a particular area, it still keeps it in a time frame that the financing and the predictions for that can be well managed. These projects do take more time to design, primarily because we know the problem, but knowing the right solution takes more time. When we begin a project, we aren't going to know the cost estimate all that well. On a roadway project, you usually have some idea of how much per mile a different type of facility is going to cost, but storm drainage is just so variable when you get into the issues. Because of that, we also do not want to have a scoring system that is a major cost-benefit analysis that just takes too much work to get to that point. We need to be able to score projects based on a more professional judgment-oriented approach, and we think that the matrix that we have here would do that. We would recommend that after we get your feedback, whatever we decide to do, we condense this down into a governing body resolution so that it's very clear to everyone that these were the rules of the road and that's what we adopted. And I will open it up for any questions you may have about that process.
Commissioner Markley.
Obviously, I'm very excited to see us getting to this point in our discussion about stormwater issues. I will say again, I think this is huge for our neighborhoods. Nobody wants to buy a house where the basement floods every 3 weeks, and nobody wants to buy a house where the street out front is flooded. So as long as we continue to pretend like these are not issues that we are involved in, we're going to continue to have trouble marketing our neighborhoods as livable places. The other thing I'll just say, for those of you who maybe haven't had a really good example of this in your district, this can just be such a huge nightmare for our constituents. So your house is flooding. The unified government owns whatever infrastructure is causing the flooding. They don't have the money to fix it, but they tell you, well, you can't do anything to fix it because you're not supposed to be messing with our roads and infrastructure. And so you're just sort of left there to watch your basement flood or your house flood for people that don't have basements over and over and over again. So that nightmare scenario happens every day in our community, and this is a great step forward to at least providing some hope that these people can get relief as time goes on.
Commissioner Philbrook?
So I like the concept of planning way ahead, and I say way ahead, that's like 5 years out. Especially since a lot of times we have to just take care of the fires that jump out in front of us right now. How, with this particular program, how do we work into that the immediacy issues that will raise their ugly little heads? Because those will happen, things that we don't necessarily expect to jump out there. You know, the things that are hidden under the streets, etc. Like you were alluding to, you really don't know until you get down there what you're dealing with. And so how does that figure in?
So, the criteria broadly for recommending projects we've talked about, and I'll come back to these. In terms of immediacy, if this is a unified government maintenance duty, we're not proposing to bring all of those through this process. We run spot repair program every year. If there's an emergency item that we need to respond to, we do keep money budgeted for that. But the way we respond to that may be an interim approach that can kind of patch and stabilize to give us then working time to figure out what to do about it. And then if it's a long-standing flooding issue, that immediacy is in the eyes of the beholder, and it's simply competing against other neighborhoods that have the same risk should the storm come and get them. At some point, by having this information, by having this process, you will all feel a lot more comfortable with feeling like you know what's out there and what the risk is. We will have more of a process to keep a tally on those, and then it just becomes a question of whether we're resourcing the program adequately enough to keep up at the level that folks feel like we need to keep up with. I will also say, the scoring, the benefits will have some scoring kind of related to the magnitude of the issue. Neighborhood support is equally important, and that will fit its way into the immediacy. The more immediate the issue, I think the more neighborhood support we're going to see for action. But you really aren't successful undertaking these kind of projects if the neighborhood itself isn't ready to be a full partner. And I think you're going to see that implicitly reflect some of the urgency. The other two criteria relate to having enough funding, but also length of time on list.
So So when you come back to us periodically, we will review where we've placed these things and adjust them as we see fit as well too. Is that part of it?
Yeah, that's why that ultimate decision making, you're going to have a list of great projects. There's going to, and we're going to come and give you our staff recommendation, but it's going to be the Board of Commissioners' role to then make those final decisions, and that's where that judgment making piece can now be handled more explicitly.
And I know you'll supply all the information we need. I have no doubt about that.
Commissioner Johnson?
Just very briefly, Bill, I don't know what the process was before, but I like this. And
There was none, so.
I just want to say that I can appreciate being able to see something that tells us that there is a process that we can apply logic to, that we can, look and see how the decision is made. I would encourage us to use these kind of matrix score sheets, however you want to categorize them more frequently. I think that would help us in evaluating the overall decision-making process and being able to provide intelligent responses back. And I also like the fact that you leave some flexibility there for those projects or those times when there might be an emergency there. So I just like the overall thought. When I saw it, I said, I like this. So I just wanted to put that out on the record that this, I'm completely in favor of this.
I have a couple questions. Can you just give us a snapshot of what the items in the matrix are?
Yes. So if you go to the last page of the staff agenda for this topic, there's a form that that looks like this. It was on the back side, perhaps,
Okay.
of your.
Gotcha. Oh, here it is. Okay.
And so, for example, it's got an economic viability question. So, can we undertake this project fiscally? How will its benefits, the value of the homes or properties being protected relative to the cost of the project? There's a public health and safety. So, based on roadway overtopping or possibly a breach of a dam or some other catastrophic, there's a way to distinguish high, moderate, and low hazard situations. And then there's points for planning issues. So, does this allow us to make an upgrade to a system that's already at the end of its design life? Does it help us with our EPA requirements or mandates? How does it fit in with development that may be happening around? And then ultimately there is a subjective ranking, which also allows us to take this kind of feedback that we may hear, high public awareness, versus local awareness versus very limited express need.
Okay, thanks. And I also just really appreciate the neighborhood component. I think that's going to be critical, and I appreciate the statement that not necessarily committing to a benefit district, but signing a petition that states support, and I think that's critical. Anything else on this item? Excellent. All right, thank you very much. And I believe that is it for this agenda. That was a discussion only item, and that concludes this Public Works and Safety meeting. We are adjourned, and I believe we should just move right into.
Do you guys need a break, or are we good?
Now, good.
All right.
Moving on. Thank you. Be safe. He didn't hear you. He's moving so fast.
I am just going to give a minute so that people can come and go and make it quiet enough in here for us to hear each other.
In case I need to ask you a question.
The Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the Standing Committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. You will have 3 minutes to state your comments. Come to the microphone to be recognized. Please remember everyone to speak into a microphone. Roll call.
Roll call, Philbrook,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Bynum, Markley.
Here. Next we have minutes from our October 26th meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes have been approved. Our first order of business is measurable goals. I'll recognize Bridget Cobbins, who will present the goals for the UG Clerk's Office. Bridget, welcome.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tee her up. We're here again on the goals, and Bridget is going to work with you tonight on the goals for the clerk's office, mailroom, and also our records center. So she has worked really hard with me to distill these down to the more aspirational level, and go ahead and take on.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Again, my name is Bridget Coppins, the Unified Government Clerk, and I'll be sharing with you my department's 2016 goals. Before we get started on the 2016 goals, I would like to follow up with the goals that I presented with you in 2015, just to give you a recap of what those goals were. We committed to providing promptness, courtesy, and sensitivity under the customer service arena. as one of the pillars for customer service. And to make those SMART goals, we had to identify 2 areas that we can drill down into to look at the areas of promptness, courtesy, and sensitivity. And the first was when we answer our phones in the clerk office. I mentioned to you last year that our goal would be to answer our phones by the 3rd ring by stating our name and department every time a staff person answered the phone in the clerk's office. A second category was responding to emails. We committed within our department that we would respond to any emails within a 48-hour, 24-hour time frame when emails are sent to our office. As a result of this goal, we did accomplish it, and we've now incorporated it into our standard operating procedure. We didn't want to have a goal, accomplish it, and then kind of forget about it. In order for it to meet to the goal, we wanted to incorporate it into our standard operating procedure. The second goal was under customer service, and under that, it was for our survey. That has been completed. We accomplished that goal, and I'll be sharing that with you in a moment. The third was the agenda management system, which a lot of you are familiar with. We use it on a weekly basis. We converted from our legacy system to a new system. The name was Suite 1, and they've now changed their name to BoardSync, but that did take place in September of 2015, so we completed that goal as well. For 2016, the goals that I'd like to share with you tonight, the first one is our strategic goal, and it's to provide an effective and transparent process for maintaining the integrity of property ownership by ensuring the following measures are adhered to for documents filed in both the Register of Deeds Office and the District Court of Wyandotte County. This goal pertains to protecting the integrity of the tax roll. And what that means, and this is a state statute driven process that we adhere to, it ensures that any property that's sold or purchased in Wyandotte County, real estate property, that once those documents are filed with their respective departments in the Register of Deeds Office or District Court, maybe it's a probate, civil court, or divorce, that once those documents are filed, that when they get into the clerk's office within 48 hours, we will have it transferred into the new owner's name. And the reason why that is important is when it's time for individuals to pay their taxes, we need to make sure that we have the proper name on those documents and that we have the address being mailed to the appropriate location. The way that we're going to accomplish that goal for the objectives to move me to that goal is going to be, we'll make sure that those deeds are processed within that 48-hour time frame. And whenever they do send in their address change forms, we will send out an email to those recipients acknowledging that we did receive their request, and then we will make that change within a 5-day period. Our second goal for our strategic goal, if you can pass those forms out, Melissa, the clerk's office strives to provide reliable customer service, and reliable customer service is to provide a level of service to consistently meet or exceed the expectations of internal and external customers. And what we're passing out will be the surveys that we'll be handing out internally to our constituents, and that will be internal staff and external staff. The first one, thank you, is a manila card, and that's for the UG clerk's office. If you look at that one, that's specifically for the clerk's office. Whenever someone comes into our office, these will be the questions that we'll be asking on the survey. When visiting the UG's clerk's office recently, were you pleased with the level of service you received? Was the demeanor of the employee courteous and professional? Did you find the employee to be well informed on the subject matter? Did you have to ring the bell for service, and was the time waited for, how long did you have to wait, was it satisfactory? This is important to me from a department head's perspective, because a lot of times you think you're doing things well in your department, but you're not quite sure. Once we put these into the hands of external customers and internally for departments, that'll give me a better sound on the things that we're doing right and the things that we need to improve upon. We wanted to get these out this time of the year because we can really use it as a tool for our homestead and utility rebate applicants. When they come into the office, after we've processed their rebates, we will be handing them those forms for them to fill out at their leisure. We will have a box in the clerk's office in which they can drop it in as they're leaving, or they can fill it out while they're waiting. We're also going to have those available at our front counter so that if anyone is interested internally and they want to provide some feedback on how we're doing as a department, they will have that as an option. And on the flip side of that, you'll see that it gives individuals an additional space if they want to share additional information about the services that they were rendered in our office. The second is a white survey card, and that's specific to our mailroom. The two questions at the top are going to be core for all of our departments, but the third one is more specific to that department. And that survey question will be, did you find your department's mail to generally be sorted properly? And the last one will be, when you contacted the mailroom staff with questions or concerns, did you feel that the employee to be well informed on the subject matter? And how I plan to make sure that these are completed in a timely manner. We have rotary boxes in the courthouse and in the City Hall building where we sort their mail. My drive will be to put one of these surveys in every single box between both buildings randomly until each department has been received the forms. That way I'll see from a holistic standpoint how we're doing when we're sorting the mail and how we're engaging with internal departments. And then on the back, again, that will give them additional space if there's information that they would like to provide to me with instructions where they can send those forms to once it's been completed. The third survey is a gray card, and on that card is specific to the Record Center. The first four questions, or the three, are going to be the standardized, and then the very last will be specific to the Record Center. And we will ask, when staff contacted in this department with the request, did you feel the response time was satisfactory? With this department, we get requests for documents that are old or have been archived. Sheriff's Department, Municipal Court, various departments use our system on a regular basis. I want to find out, when we respond to their needs, how fast do we get those documents to them and if they're correct when they send them back. And like I said, all of these surveys will be available to the general public and internally as well as externally, and we will have a box for them to fill it out. In addition to having a hard copy, I think it's important for electronic surveys to be available as well. My department's been working with IT diligently on trying to figure out an electronic survey. The hopes is that in the beginning of February, that anytime an email goes out from the clerk's office, in the body of that email, it will be attached a survey that's similar to the ones that are in the hard copy form specific to each area of my departments. And in that survey, at the very bottom, it will give individuals an opportunity to survey our department. Once they fill it out and send it back in, it'll default to this administrative queue where I'll have access to see what type of responses we're getting from internal and external. In regards to the cards that are hard copy, I'll have the ability to go in and input that data so that I can have a complete picture of what's going on within my department at all times. And with that, those are our goals for 2015, or if there are any questions.
No, but I have a comment.
Commissioner Philbrook?
Wow. So this is going to be very interesting to see, to see the response. But I'm really excited that you've gone all out. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Because so often, we have people come to us, as we're commissioners, complaining about City Hall. Well, now they get to put it in writing, and they get to say, say that stuff. They don't even have to call us now. I hope.
Right.
But even if they do, I'll remind them to fill it out. It's to tell you directly what's going on.
Right.
Thank you very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Excellent work, as always. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You guys are all good with her goals then?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Gordon Criswell, who will present the goals for human services.
All right, so this is our first shot with a high aspirational goal for our Human Services Department. Just by way of history, Human Services in this organization really is sort of made up of three divisions. The largest division being what I call developmental disabilities and mental retardation. We have a fairly large state grant that covers services for our citizens who have developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities in our county. So we're starting with a fairly high aspirational statement, which is the goal of the Human Services Department is to improve the quality of life of people in Wyandotte County through engagement of citizens and community-based organizations. And as we come back to you with what that looks like, I would like you to focus in on engagement of citizens and community-based organizations, because those are the folks that the department actually works with. And so we'll come back with, if you don't have any additions or comments on this sort of high-level goal, we'll come back with what does that look like in terms of how we'd actually deliver that services to the citizens of our community. Yes, ma'am.
So you are saying that you will come back another time with the tactics or the measurable items
Yes,
that you will do to reach that goal?
if you don't have any changes to this goal.
And did I understand correctly that Human Services is primarily doing the work of CDDO or
Correct.
old WDDS? Or,
That's
okay.
correct.
And it's a state grant. Is there a mill levy? So years ago, Wyandotte Developmental Disability Services.
We get a combination of a mill levy appropriation
Okay.
for what used to be the old WCDD, the old
WDDS.
WDDS. And we also get a grant or an appropriations
State.
from the state.
Okay, so it's still a combination.
Yes.
And
Did I-
you're gonna bring us back the steps under that goal.
Yes.
All right, I'm good with that goal.
If you don't have any changes here, the next time we meet, we'll sort of do like what Bridget did tonight was, here's how we hope you will allow us to measure getting this done.
I just have a question.
Yes.
So will that break it down into the different entities that we interact with?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'd like to just introduce Phyllis Wallace. Phyllis is my Deputy Human Services Director. I'm trying to get her acclimated to the standing committee process and the work. So the next time that we present, it will be you, Phyllis.
We're harmless, really.
So if you don't have questions,
Well, Gordon, I will ask if you will provide an index or a glossary
of
of
acronyms.
all the
Yes, yes, sir.
Amen, brother.
Okay.
talking together.
All right. No action is required for this item. Commissioner Kane, I assume you did not have any questions. Just asking. We're about to move on. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, moving along. Item number 1 on the committee agenda is a request to apply for the 2016 Choice Neighborhood Grant. Oh, she's coming around the table here. I looked over there and you were gone. I thought, well, where did she head off to?
Choice neighborhood, it's on my. Right, we have a very exciting and lovely PowerPoint presentation to use to go over with you, so give me a second while Tim pulls it up for us here. And I have Tim Laughlin with me here tonight, acting as my wingman as we go through this new grant application process that we are endeavoring upon, should you allow us to go ahead and submit for it, so.
Bring your microphone just a little.
Am I not close enough? Is that better?
Amen.
All right, very good. Thank you for pointing that out. So I'm going to guess how this works because this is my first time using a PowerPoint in here. So our first slide here is kind of a description of what Choice Neighborhoods is built off of. It's a former grant program that I know nothing about called Hope 6. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a HUD program that was started in the 90s, I believe, maybe around 92, 93, somewhere in there. See,
Absolutely.
Maybe I do know more than I thought. It was utilized in various iterations throughout the 90s and into the 2000s in about 260 different communities. And the idea was replacing old public housing units that were not basically meeting needs of those who were living in them at the time. And also using those dollars and plans to also build market rate units as well as affordable units to help create a more of a mixed income area. And then what you can see in the bottom chart is that it's basically a redevelopment area of a large part of blocks of a city. It's not just the housing development that was built by HUD in, say, circa 1970 something. What it's done over the 20 years you can see there is boost home values in the areas where the HOPE dollars were injected, reduce the amount of federal subsidies going to the projects where individuals were living that had affordable housing needs, and also helped reduce crime rates, and also created jobs for every $110,000 invested. So a lot of multiplying effects, as it's noting there, but a pretty powerful setup. It did have some drawbacks. On the next page kind of talks about that. So what Choice Neighborhoods is another iteration of Hope 6, and what they did is look at the parts that were working really successfully out of that and then tried to better them. So you'll see in the left-hand spot there that it says revitalize distressed public housing. That still continues to be it, and also address other assisted housing needs. So where you may have individuals that aren't necessarily poverty stricken, but they've got maybe disabilities or other challenges, that this kind of broadens for that under Choice Neighborhoods. Leverages new funds. I think what we're seeing with this, just in our short stint into this since early December, is that it brings in an immense amount of different stakeholders, and also the public-private partnership side of this type of grant is huge. And then catalyzing neighborhood investment. That's the part that we found really fascinating about these as we went through these with HUD. And we're going to show you a couple of these as we move through the presentation this evening. The part down there is housing people in neighborhoods. That's HUD's goal, and I think it's a little more exciting than that, and the next slide kind of starts to break that down. In orange or light, whatever that is, not black, writing is the words that I'm going to focus on as we move through this. The housing side, the idea is to transform distressed public and assisted housing, of which the one that we're looking at tonight, I'll go ahead and talk to you about, and working with the Housing Authority, is actually Wyandotte Towers. That's the one we're focusing on. It's the top priority for the Kansas City Area Housing Authority. Both Tom and Tony would have loved to have been here tonight. However, Tom is under the weather, significantly under the weather, I was told. And Tony had several other commitments that he couldn't rearrange when Tom wasn't able to be here. So they send their regards and say, yes, this is great, they love it. So the idea is it'll create mixed income housing when we go through the planning process, and that's what we're applying for. We'll get into that in a little bit. These units, when they're done under the model that's set out through HUD and Choice Neighborhoods, are energy efficient and sustainable. So you'll see them, employing all the best practices in creating very sustainable housing environments for folks that are also cheaper to run when they're living in them. And it creates a financial model that's viable, so in which the private sector will seek to invest. And then it's one-for-one replacement. The previous Hope 6 didn't actually do one-for-one replacement. The beauty of this Choice Neighborhoods is it does take every unit that we have, and that was why the area that we'll talk about tonight that we're looking at is a little bit more limited, because if you bite off too much, it's very hard to get all the units replaced. So we're looking at 301 units. Is that correct? Or you don't remember?
300, it's close enough.
Okay, he's supposed to be my numbers guru tonight.
You're doing great, especially on that color orange comment.
Yeah, the orange comment, yes. So what we're seeing with this is that some of the former individuals that used Hope 6 in their communities, that was one thing that was a bit of a concern because you wouldn't have one-for-one replacement of the units. And it allows one-for-one within the entire community, not just within the area where you're working. So that's a really valuable.
That's an important theme of the grant. This is choice neighborhoods. The experience of HUD is that only roughly 50% of the people who live in a given location choose to return to that location. The rest relocate throughout their community. So that's a very successful part of breaking down the concentration of high needs individuals and replacing that tower, which is little more than a rabbit hutch, with an actual viable neighborhood. In the Hope 6 grant, while there's one-for-one replacement of the living space available for the people who live there now, they also built almost one extra unit for each one they replaced at subsidized or market rate. So they double the number of units in the area. And this grant perpetuates that model, replacing it with an actual neighborhood.
So then the other ideal behind this choice neighborhoods process, which was an augmentation or slightly improved off of the Hope 6, is that it does provide employment opportunities. So as they're going through and working on this, the eye on the prize is that if there are individuals that are able to learn a trade or a skill, that the developer that you ultimately choose to work with on this would actually work to employ those folks that are employable. And ensure residents have the right to return. And as Tib noted, there is a significant amount of out-migration when you do these types of projects, but that often is just an opportunity for individuals that have had to stay in one spot who actually get the opportunity to pick where they want to live. So it's kind of a win-win for us and for the residents in that mindset. So then of course creating neighborhoods that are create opportunities. The private partnerships with the public is huge in the way this is done. Safer environments, more effective schools, and improving your transit infrastructure. The idea is that it really looks to hone around that. All right. So the next highlighted areas up here are also where I want you to focus, since I was able to borrow this presentation from HUD. We're looking at a planning grant. So far there's been 63 of those awarded for about $20 million in HUD funding. What we're looking at for the 15 cycle is a due date of February 9th for turning this grant application in. We have spent quite a few hours in the last few weeks. Yeah, quite a few hours. Poring over the requirements of this and working with the Housing Authority, the Mayor's Office, and other consultants that have been working in the Healthy Campus area, because this is where we can actually get this done. We have the data. As you can also see, our neighbors, Kansas City and Missouri, have received one of these. But what you will see is there are no applications in the state of Kansas. I augmented this from HUD. I had to stand out that we are actually considered a very desirable place to do one of these, because there's a variety of other funding mechanisms that the state of Kansas, municipalities, et cetera, have not actually tapped into, and that makes us a much better grant applicant for them. So what we're looking at is actually the bottom bullet, a 3-year planning and action grant that can range up to $2 million. We're hoping for the full 2, nothing more, nothing less. And that would basically allow us the time in the first 2 years to build the partnerships and develop a comprehensive neighborhood revitalization plan, which is the key behind getting this going. And then what you'll see in the upcoming slides is that there's a second phase to this, but we got to get the first shoe on so we can do the second one. So what it will do is bring in local leaders, residents, stakeholders throughout the area to discuss what we're looking to do to establish community support. Should you approve this tonight, we are looking to begin advertising early next week, a public meeting on this on February 3rd, with our eye on the 9th of February for the grant submission. So number 2 is what we will be looking to go ahead and move forward with. This is planning and action grant. It's a 3-year time horizon where we do the actual planning for the area. And then it's also got this action component, which is really different than the previous choice neighborhoods. It's allowing up to, I believe, $1.5 million of the $2 million to be used towards an activity. And as noted below, that can be reclaiming or recycling vacant properties, beautification, placemaking, community arts, business facade, home owner facade improvements, and then there's some Wi-Fi components and other gap financing for economic development projects. Again, why the healthy neighborhood, gosh, I can't even say
You
it.
haven't actually mentioned that this would cover the same footprint as the Healthy Campus.
That's what I'm trying to say, healthy campus. I was like, healthy neighborhood, boy, I'm saying choice neighborhood. So that would cover the healthy campus area. We're actually looking at defining our area slightly larger than that, but right now we are talking to the individuals that have written these grants and asking, is that footprint the footprint we should use, or do we need to expand it? And we have actually been using maps and layering all of our GIS data onto there to kind of see what makes sense. So one of the options, aside from the footprint of the healthy campus, is actually 14th Street to the river, and I think is it Lafayette on the north, which is just north of Parallel, south to Sandusky. So that's that's our option B that we're trying to determine which of those make most sense when we submit for this. But it can expand and contract depending on how we move through this actual 2-year planning process. So it's not firm, it's just what we have to submit to get the grant process started.
And the $2 million is not our ultimate goal here. The $2 million is
The tip of
what
the
funds
iceberg.
are planning to bring in a project that involves a public-private partnership that leverages over $100 million to revitalize a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately, just here's an example of what happened during this 2-year planning that you can see that the city of Boston did. They revitalized a building that had a meats factory in it, did some public Wi-Fi, commercial facade improvements, some facility improvements for some local nonprofits. As you can see, just start reading down there, you can just see how this fits in so well with the healthy campus and surrounding area. So that was before, and here's your after, what they were able to do with the money there. So in KCMO, similar type of thing they're already into the process of, but they've also now received the $30 million award that then leverages the $100 million that Tibb's talking about. So basically, we go through this 3-year process, and as we're going through it, we're setting ourselves up to apply for the $30 million that actually does the changeover, that helps with the Wyandotte Tower, that helps with the one-for-one replacement, that sets up and redesigns a portion of our community to be mixed income, mixed housing types, and help create a healthy, sustainable neighborhood that wasn't previously there. So the Paseo Gateway project, as it's known in KCMO, Shoto Courts is the housing authority project over there. Theirs is a slightly smaller number of units, about half of what we're looking at. And this is kind of the boundaries that they showed in their application, just to give you an idea. You look at schools, you want to have schools within the boundaries, and we obviously need to meet that low mod requirement. And we've done that through our look at the healthy campus area. We're meeting all of those. And the last thing that we have here for a slide on the grant that we're looking to apply is just kind of what their grantee team look like. Right now, we have Lisk at the table. We've already talked to a company that's going to help us write the grant. It's McCormick, Barron, Salazar. They've won 8 of the 14 of the Choice Neighborhood grants, so we feel they are a very good partner to have at our table. And the Housing Authority will not be the lead applicant. It will be the city of Kansas City, Kansas, with them being the co-grantee. They have applied for several Hope 6 and not been successful, but we believe our partnership is what's going to win the day here.
So the Housing Authority will be working with us on this.
Yeah, they are, absolutely. In fact, just talked to them today again, and we're working on setting the public meeting date together. We actually spent a day in December, Tib and I, as well as some of the staff from the mayor's office and Wilba Miller, walking through what this grant looked like and talking with HUD staff and also the developer from McCormick, Barron, Salazar, who's actually was born in this area, in
Yes.
Argentine. He's related to, help me, what's her name? Yes, Irene, yes, with, yeah, El Centro. So it's actually a really kind of a neat connection back to a very large development company out of St. Louis. So hopefully with their help in writing the grant, we'll be in a good spot to receive the dollars and move forward.
I would say that this is a great opportunity. Fits in well with the Healthy Campus initiative. It fits in well with the overall discussion about the Northeast Master Plan. Is the idea to replace the tower with overall housing, and I guess what I think I'm hearing from you is that it will, that housing will expand into existing neighborhoods that we have right now to the north and to the south and to the east as well.
We'll actually go through a whole planning process to see what that looks like. So we can't tell you visually what that's going to look like, but I certainly could get you some examples of what work has been done in other communities, from Atlanta, Georgia, to New Orleans, to St. Louis. There's a variety of these types of projects. So the site area that we would be, working with a private developer on would be within the blocks of that defined neighborhood that we end up landing on, starting with a Healthy Campus and whether or not we move out from there or not. The 1-for-1 does not always have to be in that area. In fact, it could be somewhere else. So the idea is if we have people with mental health needs, that we get them closer to the facilities they need, that we look at individuals and try to meet their needs best as we do their new location that they can live in. So whether it's staying there or if it's moving somewhere else in the community, that makes more sense.
I like the idea of spreading out the concentrate,
Right.
where you have this concentrated enrollment there.
Yes.
To spread it out.
And the tower is likely to not be there when we're all said and done.
Well, but having said that, would that mean that there would be some housing at that existing spot, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There would still be, that would be the core piece of their housing replacement, but because you're replacing with a lower, with a still relatively high density mixed use area, but a much shorter building, there's a limit to how many units you can fit on that same footprint.
And could you define the components of the mixed use?
Well, but for their terms in mixed use, it's a combination of HUD bedrooms, of subsidized bedrooms, or as they call them, affordable bedrooms, and market rate housing.
And it also means it could be some buildings that are like apartments or condos
Right,
that are
okay.
either for sale or for rent.
Right.
Could be townhouses, row homes that are for sale or for rent. And then it could be single-family housing. So you would be coming back with literally a mixture of housing types to meet the different needs of people. It's regardless of, income or whatever. So really trying to look at what can make a sustainable community. So if you're 85 years old and you're looking for a place, there's
Right.
going to be something in there for you.
Right.
And if you're 22 just graduating from college, and everything in between. So it's really that cradle to grave neighborhood philosophy that creates a place that is exciting and inviting to be in.
And my last question, anyway, go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm sure you'll remember. So what I'm hearing is that we may have 50 to 60% of the same number, of units, so to speak, in that area, and then 40%, which could be wherever you find that would work the best for the folks that need that type of housing, which is a mixed housing, so that could be almost any place, as long as we take into transportation and health considerations, that sort of thing.
Right, and there are rigid criteria for what those satellite locations still have to provide the same criteria that you have in at your main facility. They still have to be close to services, they have to be close to transit, they have to meet the same criteria, but they don't have to be in the same place.
And the interesting thing about this is, one of the concerns I had as we were talking about this with the Housing Authority is that going to be something that makes your jobs harder to do and actually they said, no, it'll make it easier. So that was surprising to me. I thought having everyone in one location, when they said, no, we're actually looking forward to doing this, so.
I think I just want to make something that you said, I just want to reiterate just so that those that are watching this will hear that there is an opportunity for the public to be part of this discussion, so the constituents, particularly in my district, will be able to have that opportunity.
Not just the opportunity, the requirement in the process.
Fabulous.
There is
Again and again.
significant participation for the public in general and for the current HUD clientele specifically. There's a lot of participation.
So just to even start into the process with the grant, we have to have a public meeting before we even submit our application. And then once we go into that 3-year cycle, and I'm just affirmative that we're going to get this, then we will have, like Tip said, a multitude of requirements. And we're just very thankful. The HUD Region 7 staff reached out to us on this and said, we think you belong doing this.
Right.
So that was very fortunate because I don't think it was on our radar.
Well, go ahead.
Commissioner King?
With that, I'll make a motion to approve.
There you go. I will just say, I'm glad to see that we are partnering with our local office on this, as we have not had the best communication maybe all the way around, so it's good. It's a good partnership as well as a good opportunity.
It's a good beginning.
Yes, yes, very much. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Philbrook,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Bynum. Markley.
Aye. Thank you guys very much. All right, the next item is an ordinance amendment, which will be presented by the very patient Judge Mo Ryan, who has been waiting patiently to present.
Thank you very much. We are asking the County Commission to amend the ordinance of pro tems to remove the restriction that the pro tems be Wyandotte County residents. We've had this in effect for quite a long time. Our number of pro tems is limited. The number of attorneys that continue to live in Wyandotte County that are not already employed by our governmental unit is very small. And I can tell you that we first approached the legal department about a month and a half ago. We spend about $10,000 to $11,000 a year on pro tems. In the past month, we've lost 2 people that account for for 9,000 of that amount. Cheryl Stewart, who by far and away, I think she did about $8,500 worth of pro temming. She moved to Oakley, Kansas, and is obviously not going to be coming back here to pro tem. And then Ed Gillette, who did probably about half a dozen sessions a year. If you don't know, he passed away a couple weeks ago. So we're asking that the ordinance be amended. That would open it up to anyone authorized to practice in the state of Kansas. If that is approved, we would then send out requests for attorneys to make application, and then we would choose from that list. I will tell you that we have checked to see what our rates are compared to other municipalities that use pro tems. We're right at the norm. Most of them are between $50 and $75 per hour. Our average session is about 2 to 2.5 hours, so that puts us right at $50 to $62 per hour. It ranges anywhere from across the street in district court, which only pays about $30 an hour, but that's set by the state, up to Leawood, who pays $150 an hour. I can tell you that in the past year, because of the limited number of pro tems available, both Judge Brakovich and myself took fewer vacation days than what we were allotted, simply because we couldn't find anybody to replace us. And if this is not passed, then we'll be taking a lot fewer vacation days in the future.
Just for anyone who's watching who doesn't know what a pro tem is.
Oh, a pro tem judge is an attorney that fills in when we're on vacation, sick, at judges' meetings, or what have you.
So it's like a substitute judge.
Substitute judge, right. And right now we have We have 3 that are available, one of whom is Mark Dupree, that he's going to be limited because of his political campaign, so we won't be able to use him a lot. And we have Renee Henry, who only does it on Tuesdays, and Bridget Shell, who, she does it just every now and then, but very limited.
Well, and just, it's sort of like having substitute teachers in that you have to have a big bank of them because you're not guaranteed that the day you need them, they're going to be available when you call. So we can't just say, well, as long as we have one, right, then we should be fine. And there has to be enough of them that if somebody gets sick, it's a last minute sort of call, that person can be available. So that's why it's important to have more than just one name on the list in case the person either has other cases they're handling or isn't available.
But I do have some questions around this. So we're so undesirable, nobody wants to work for us. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, it's just that.
No, I just need to hear what he's saying because we have a lot of attorneys in Wyandotte County. How many are, and I'm not saying, I shouldn't say available, how about how many are not restricted by whatever type of work they're doing or allegiances to the city or county?
We probably have, that live in Wyandotte County, probably 10. And of those, most of them are retired judges. I've asked every retired judge from the district court, Judge Boding, Judge Bowl, Judge Johnson. We're going to talk to Judge Groneman.
The reason I ask this question is because I want other people to understand that just because we have lawyers here, it doesn't mean they live here. And, so I appreciate the issue and the difficulty it can be in trying to get someone to fill in. Thanks.
Well, and another comment, this just because I am an attorney, if an attorney can fill their time with a caseload where they're getting paid to be an attorney, this is sort of a second choice in what you would do with your time. So in some ways it might be a good thing that our attorneys aren't necessarily raising their hand to say, I want to do this, because that means they're probably filling their time with more profitable work. We just have a fewer attorneys in our bar who do the type of work that would make them qualified to be a pro tem, so it makes it more complicated.
And we are the only city that currently has a restriction, the residency restriction on pro tems that we've surveyed.
Just to reiterate what Commissioner Merkley was saying, when this first came forward, I had some questions and unhappiness about it, but given the explanation of the smallness of the pool and the fact of the matter is attorneys can do other things with their time and make more money, it creates for you the need to widen the number of folks who you can offer this to.
Correct.
Am I stating that correctly?
Correct. To give you an idea, I haven't looked at any surveys recently, but I can tell you the last time I did, the average overhead per hour for attorneys is about $85 to $90 per hour. So when we're paying them $62 per hour or thereabouts, that doesn't cover their overhead if they have an active practice. It's like Ed Gillette. Ed Gillette made a lot more money than $62 per hour, but he did it as a favor to me and to others. He felt a responsibility to Wyandotte County. So there are those that, those are very few and far between.
Commissioner Kane.
Well, I'm uncomfortable with this.
I understand, sir.
And because everybody that works here lives here. But I also understand that you two need time off. And what I would rather try this temporarily to see if we could reach out to the others after these elections are over. Start it now, get the elections over, see where we're at, and then reevaluate. And then you can come back and say, well, we got 6 from Johnson County, we got whatever, this is working real well, you know, or maybe we can, this is a hard pill to swallow. You know, so I wouldn't mind trying it on a temporary basis until we can try to figure something out. And when I say temporary, maybe 6 months. And then come back and say nobody from Wyandotte County wanted to do it, and we're in this boat.
So is it, I'm looking to somebody from staff to answer this, can we approve this and then ask for Judge Ryan to come back and speak with us in 6 months to see what the status of the situation is?
Well, there's a couple of ways that the standing committee can deal with that. One is, of course, you can ask to report back at any point in time to evaluate the success of the program. But one thing that, you know, right now it is an absolute requirement that you're a resident. You know, as a practical matter, Judge Ryan is going to want to have attorneys who are familiar with the district or the municipal court practice in their procedures to do this. You don't want to have someone who's never been in our court come in and act as a pro tem judge. He can give some emphasis, I guess, to those that he finds that are residents and those who are who actively have a business here in Wyandotte County. You know, they may not be a resident of Wyandotte County, but they do practice law and have an office here in Wyandotte County. You give a priority to those people because this ordinance gives him the responsibility of promoting those procedures whereby he designates people eligible for that job.
I think I like the way Kenny just said that.
Would you like to make a motion based on his statement?
Well, what I do is the ordinance does call on me to compile a list of pro tems and then submit that list to either the administrator or the commission for approval. As always, I would prefer someone that lives in Wyandotte County. The second would be those that have an active practice in Wyandotte County. And I think that when you broaden it to those that have an active practice in Wyandotte County, that I hope that we can get enough to cover.
Commissioner King.
Okay, I like where you're going, and I like that a lot better. Because we can't have somebody over here that doesn't know our people, and doesn't know what it's like to work, live in Wyandotte County. I mean, I don't want some yuppie over here telling us farm boys how to do something. So I would prefer that we tried this on a trial basis, using those if they don't necessarily live here, that they have an office here, and maybe do that for 6 months and see where that goes. Is that possible, counsel?
You want a test period of 6 months?
Yes.
Can we just have him come back and report in 6 months, and then if we don't like it, we change it from there?
That's fine too.
Yeah.
I just need, he needs the flexibility he knows what he needs.
Yeah.
He knows a lot better than what we know. And he knows the people that specifically that he's got in mind already. So let's do that.
Yeah, I can tell you, I think the primary's in August, so I don't know who all is going to be running, but I do know, I'm hoping that maybe Bob Sarah will want to do it once he finishes his time on the bench. I'm hoping Mary Ann Neath, who has a practice here, whose father was on the commission. She doesn't live here, but she has an active practice here. She's expressed an interest in being a pro tem. There are 2 or 3 other people that have come to talk to me about being a pro tem that don't meet the current criteria.
I think the standing committee can approve this ordinance as it's submitted, and then just with request that Judge Ryan return at some future date to give a report on if it's working or not.
Okay. I make that motion.
Second.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Philbrook.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Bynum. Markley.
Aye. Thank you, Judge Ryan.
Thank you very much.
All right. Last but not least, our last order of business is a discussion on the non-CDBG grant processes, actually a continuing discussion as we talked about this last meeting. I'll ask Joe Connor to make remarks.
Thank you, Commissioners, and good evening. Just kind of expanding or continuing our discussion that we had last month about the non-CDBG grant processes.
First, I just want to kind of review where we're at, make sure we're still kind of good to go. We talked about the drug and alcohol grants, and I think that overall the committee was fine with the grants the way they were. There is some boards and commissions discussions pending that may or may not affect this particular grant. As you recall, this particular board, for the way this is done, is not required, although we have it by ordinance. And then there was also some discussion at one of the other committees about board member attendance when they were approving the grants, and so that'll be addressed during the boards and commissions discussion as that's going on. So as far as I think we were good to go with this one, unless there's some other discussion with the way this particular grant is going.
Anyone? Okay.
Okay, great. The second one was the community funding application. That's what we've used the last couple of budget cycles to gather up information at the beginning of the budget process from organizations and citizens about individual requests for funding from the unified government. One of the things that you asked is, can we just kind of retitle that application and make it more applicable to what we're actually trying to get to now that CDBG is separate from the budget process. So we'll work with Reginald Lindsay a little bit on this, and we came up with citizen and community stakeholder budget initiatives. Again, this was just another way of providing folks with input, not only if you're an individual, but also if you're a community member or a not-for-profit or whatever. So we kind of covered the gamut. So if you like it, it's my idea. If you don't like it, it's Reggie's. Idea.
Now, that's not a nice way to treat him.
I want to understand this piece that you're proposing is the application that we could find online.
Yeah, we would
prior to now included the CDBG that we've now separated.
Correct. We would have to redo the application because of everything that was CDBG that was in there. This was just, we wanted to, the instructions that I think I was given was to maintain this application, but let's call it something different to make sure it's completely separate, and also give people at the beginning of the budget process the opportunity to submit what they would like to see the commissioners consider. If you look at the second bullet, we've got consider changing the timing of the application. Previously, we had it due on the day of the public hearing for the budget, the very first day. We'd like to get away from that date and give people the opportunity to come to the public hearing and ask for things in general, but maybe give them another week to complete this application, not have those two kind of come together.
Yeah, so I think the idea is now that this application doesn't include CDBG, what we're really doing is supplying people who maybe can't attend the public hearing or for whatever reason would rather submit in writing their public hearing item. They would submit this form instead of coming to the public hearing and speaking to us or maybe in addition to it. Each year as we've done this generalized application, we've gotten our CDBG applications through it. We've also had a number of additional requests that were things like, I think you should, fund a horse patrol for the police department, or I think you should put more money into XYZ. This is to deal with those sorts of budget initiatives, I want you to spend more money here and please put money toward that sort of thing.
And I guess I'm still advocating for if a citizen or community stakeholder is asking the Unified Government Commission to allocate tax dollars to their project, that strikes me as an application. If that stakeholder is asking the commission to allocate tax dollars to something we already do, and they just want us to spend more doing that, that's not an application, and that's where I just keep getting stuck, and I won't continue to push that. I think they are two different things.
So, but I guess that's the naming issue. We're not calling it application anymore.
Okay.
We're calling it a budget initiative.
Okay.
Unless you have a better
As long as
idea.
we don't use that word,
the old name, just to be clear, the old name was community funding application.
And now.
New name is citizen and community stakeholder budget initiatives, which is a mouthful, but it does not say application.
You could also go to budgetary request or budget request.
Sure, I'm trying to get away from the, what I think
Yeah.
might be false notion
Correct.
that we're inviting them to apply for money.
Well, and I'm afraid request might get that same false
So,
notion.
okay.
Yeah, recommendation's okay, and
I'm
I'm okay
good.
with initiative too,
I'm
because that
good.
doesn't suggest any sort of gifting of money.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, all right. So we're good to go with that one. We'll look at, when we do the budget calendar, we'll put a separate date in there for this particular piece to be due. Just won't be due on the same day as the budget kickoff or our public hearing, because
Okay.
there was confusion there. Okay, thanks.
Stop. Yeah, all I have to say is if I didn't know what we were already talking about, I wouldn't know what we're talking about. By your title. I really. Can we simple it down just a little bit, and don't ask me to make it simple, because it could be. Would you like to say that into a?
I understand what you're saying. I think with a brief paragraph, it could be explained.
Okay, because I'm just looking at.
I think as long as we communicate.
Yeah, I think that what we'll do is a part of the, when we give you the budget calendar at the kickoff, we'll have that in there, and we'll know exactly what that is and provide an explanation.
Well, I just want those folks out there that want to put their 2 cents worth in to understand that they actually have that opportunity, and we don't scare the heck out of them just by the name.
Sure.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Anything else?
No.
Okay, the other thing you asked for last time was information on the Hollywood Casino, the UG Hollywood Casino grant. This is part of the additional information. This table shows you the 3 years that we've had the grant, the total amount requested, the number of applications that got us to those numbers, how much we had to award, the total number of awards, and I gave you the grant average. So I think that was just a piece of information that you wanted to have, and I handed that out to you prior to the meeting starting.
Any questions on that? All right, moving along.
Okay. The other thing you wanted to talk about was what additional services are available from the Community Foundation, and how can that help us with setting up a structure or a process for next year. So these were things that they had sent to me, and with, just things they do for other clients, things that they offer just to grantees in general. And there's kind of 2 sections worth. One is the grant development. So you can kind of see that they'll assist applicants in developing and refining their grant request. They'll conduct due diligence to identify programs and organizations that meet guidelines of what we set forward as guidelines. Prepare recommendations to assist in the grant review and the approval process, and then attend and participate in commission meetings if we'd like to have them do that, to provide some technical assistance for us. On the grant monitoring side, during the grant cycle, I mean, they obviously collect reports and things like that now, but they would go a little bit further and do a lot more monitoring of the grants, of the grantees, and make site visits if we require, or if they feel it's necessary. Provide reports on deviations or use if grantees are having a hard time spending their money or whatever, they would be assistance there. Technical assistance and troubleshooting, and then provide an annual report summarizing grantee progress. So depending on that menu of things that they've provided, that's a cost of about $12,500 to $17,500 in addition to what we're paying now. We're paying $5,100 now for the services that they're offering. So it would put us into the $17,500 to $21,500 range annually, depending on what we chose. I mean, again, it's just pretty labor intensive, depending on how we picked it, what the cost, what would drive the cost. Any
Question?
Mm-hmm.
Could you go back a slide? What pieces, for the 5,100, what pieces of this page are they doing now?
None. I mean, the 5,100, I didn't list what they're doing for us now. That was a separate.
I know that they are sort of acting as the online portal.
Well, they are the online portal.
And receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Is that about it?
They're holding the money for us. They do provide technical assistance if people have trouble getting their applications submitted. So they can call and say, hey, I was uploading it and it crashed on me, or they provide that kind of support. And they do check the 501c3 registry for us. And so they provide just the bare minimum kind of back office support to do that.
What were they doing when we had the other committee that we dissolved? Were they doing the same level of work at that point in time?
They were doing quite a bit of what was in the grant development and the grant monitoring sections. I don't know if they were doing all of that, but they were doing quite a bit of it.
So they were doing a lot of this work that you have up here to assist the last committee several years, well,
The
3 years ago.
The
Yeah,
first, 2
2
years. Yeah.
Okay.
So one possibility that's sort of crossed my mind is that we could maybe strike a medium between the two different programs by perhaps having the foundation do additional due diligence, but then the commissioners still award the funds. So what would come to us would be a more detailed list of the grants and more information about what is sort of what meets our guidelines and what doesn't and why. The idea being, I think there had been some concern here about whether money was being awarded to groups that had the capacity to perform. If the foundation were able to provide us additional details that would give some of that information, it would provide some additional accountability for the commissioners as well, because if one of us is going to award money to an organization that the foundation has said does not have the capacity to perform, when all the commissioners look at that list to approve it, presumably we're going to say, wait a minute, foundation says this one can't handle it. So that might be a way to add some accountability and still take elements of that other program and really have sort of a compromise position where commissioners still have some control, but we know that the money is going to someone who has capacity. Commissioner Philbrook?
So having said that, if they were already doing this kind of grant development work in the past, how much of that could they drop out? Not really too much, other than just picking the grants. Is that correct? I mean, well, I know, but I'm trying to understand, you know, what kind of, I don't think that we're going to get a big break in monies from what we're asking if we want them to go ahead and do everything except hand us the information and then we pick it. Am I wrong? I mean,
I think the compromise is really a matter of who's doing the picking, because the original system, there was a committee assigned. There were, as you have all heard in the past, a number of problems with how that happened, just because, well, the committee themselves just told us there were a number of problems with how that worked and the level of time that our volunteers had to put into that process. So I think the compromise is that we would still have the foundation doing that level of detailed work that they were doing to support the committee, but the committee now becomes the commissioners, instead of this group of volunteers who ended up spending a whole lot more time than I think we anticipated trying to go through the information.
so basically, I just want people to understand the compromise isn't about how much money we're going to save, you know, by doing this. It's the compromises, the political aspects of whether we're going to individually pick things or if we're going to have a remote committee to do it, somebody other than the commission. Is that what I'm understanding?
I would only take issue with the word political, because actually,
Oh, well, okay.
it's partially
We're
practical.
We're
Like I
all,
said.
we're all elected. That's why I say political.
It is, but really, I mean, the committee themselves came to us and told us this is not working. So we could assign it out to some other different kind of committee, but we've got to figure out. The problem has been we can't find a way to make that work. We haven't so far, at least.
Under this grant development, the foundation would not make the final decision. They're just making recommendations. That's what I'm seeing at this particular time, right?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, everything on this list, if you did that, they would give you, here's what we think is, you know, top to bottom, here's what we think, you guys can choose. But if you, I mean, to Commissioner Markley's point, I think if you're looking at just that second bullet, I don't think that gets you to that point.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it would just get you, the applications would be vetted a little further, but they wouldn't be scored or ranked, or it would just be, the application would be gone over a little bit more, right? I mean, that's,
Yeah, like I said, I guess my hope would be that information would allow us to sort of force each other into accountability, because not to say that any of the grants that received awards last time would have come up as a problem, but there were concerns and that maybe those weren't vetted as well as they should have been. If someone else vetted them, we could look to each other and say, you're trying to give money to this organization that the foundation is saying can't handle the funds. So that would allow us to sort of use the evidence to support or reject applications as needed.
The issue I take with the current method is very, very simple, and that is that I don't believe elected officials handing out charitable grant dollars is good policy. And it's as simple as that. And I've stated that in the past. That being said, if the community foundation and we as this group can land on a dollar amount we find acceptable, which is apparently going to be around $20,000 from what you've given us here.
that'd be the top end, yeah.
So we would spend around $20,000 of this money to get from the community foundation this array of services, which includes written recommendations for which of the grant applications should be put forward to commissioners for approval. I could probably live with that as a form of compromise. I struggle, again, with elected officials making charitable grant dollar recommendations. It's as simple as that for me. But if we're in the spirit of working together and trying to fund good things in our community, which I think is what we're trying to do, and we have their help with recommendations, that helps me feel better. So I'll leave it at that.
And I will say, just for everyone's benefit, I am trying to get us to a compromise because I don't feel confident after last year's sessions that we're all going to agree in the spirit of things to exactly what we would each like to see. So I'm trying to get us to a compromise where everybody feels comfortable, if not all the way happy.
Yeah, so.
Comfort.
Exactly. So I agree with Commissioner Bynum. I'm willing to compromise with the knowledge that I'm going to have a professional team looking over all of these, knowing that they've been vetted thoroughly and that they're giving us their recommendations, so then we can look at them and make our decisions among ourselves. And I mean, I trust that we all have the best in mind for our community. I don't have a problem with that. The concern for me was last year, just as you said, I felt that we didn't know enough to make a very well-educated decision on all of these different groups. So I can go along with that.
I have a few more questions, but go ahead.
So, based off of this proposal or what we're seeing in terms of the dollar amount, does that mean that we all would have to take, I'm trying to think of a better word to say this, but a $2,000 cut off of the total amount that we would be distributing per district?
Yeah,
is that about right?
If you go back to this chart, if you look at the 2015 number, that's about that's about where we were at.
Just short of $2,000.
So then you would have to lower it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If I could just, I don't really want to complicate the issue. Another way to think about this would be that teams of commissioners choose the grants and that they aren't individual choices. That would be another option we could look at, that teams of commissioners come together to award X number of dollars. Mike, I have a couple more questions. I know that you've given us this Schlitterbaum Vacation Village memo. So do we need to also deal with that, or, that's an additional dollar amount? Is that part of this discussion before we?
That's up to you. I mean, I
finish
bring it
up
up as a
tonight?
separate item because I think it's a
Okay.
separate, it's.
Okay.
I
it's
was
a
gonna say, that's a separate situation.
And the only other question I had was that I know you've also given us the 2015 guidelines, and I'm just curious if we're all satisfied with the guidelines that were in place last year.
And that was a request from the last meeting, was to bring those
Okay.
back to you as well.
Which I'm fine with them. They do include that the applying entity be a 501c3.
Sure,
So
absolutely, yeah.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay, so are there, first of all, just to jump to that, are there any other questions on the 2015 guidelines or on any of the follow-up materials provided from last meeting? Okay.
Do we need to recommend them?
Well, that's what I'm
Sorry.
you're perfect. So, we are going to discuss this, I believe, at a full commission special session. What I think Joe needs from us is direction. If this is our compromise idea, he can go back and sort of verify the details with the foundation, maybe bring us a little closer dollar figure, and have that prepared for that special session. So do we feel good enough about this idea of a compromise to sort of let him lead us in that direction? That doesn't mean the rest of the commission will agree, but at least it'll get us something to present to them as our concept of how this might look.
I'm okay.
I don't have a problem with
Okay.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, you're talking about the grant development and the grant monitoring.
Correct.
Yes.
Which I did want to make one quick comment about the grant monitoring piece. Sorry. I spoke with Joe last week, or I had sent him a note late last week, asking, per the 2015 grant applications, those 6 months reports were due before the new year started. And my question for Joe at that time was, would we be able to see those? Would it help us at all with this discussion? I think it's important that at some point we get an opportunity to see the reports. I appreciate the Community Foundation being responsible for receiving them and like it says, monitoring and the things that it outlines here. I think sometimes you can be really, really good at a program and not really good at doing the required reports. And I think adhering to the guidelines we set forward should be a big piece of what we explain to these groups. It's my understanding some of the grantees from last year owe us a report yet.
Yes, I don't have that list
And
ready for you, but I
so
will have it ready.
I would like to see the 6-month reports of the 2015 grantees when we get a chance.
Sure. If you'd like them before February 4th, I can certainly have those available.
possible.
Yeah.
And I would just say, just in terms of how that special session moves along, to any extent that we can get these numbers broken down to what it would look like with maybe with the monitoring or without the monitoring, and with page 1 and page 2 and both of them together, any level of breakdown will, I think, assist us in sort of coming to a compromise with that group as well.
The way you're seeing it is a price for this page?
Yes.
And a price for that page?
Yes. That way we have,
Give or take.
the more options, the easier I think it will be.
That's no problem. Okay.
I would add that to Commissioner Bynum's point, if organizations don't comply, and you all will have to inform me on this, if they don't comply with the reporting and whatnot, it should restrict them from prior or from future opportunities to apply. If they're, okay.
I believe that's what we talked about last year. If they don't come back and give us a report, that automatically makes them ineligible for asking for money, because why would you give money if they didn't give you the report?
Right, exactly. Okay.
But what I can do before the next meeting is I can get you a list of those that have not turned in a report. I'll just email it out.
Okay.
And then I'll have the reports ready before the February 4th meeting, if you'd like to look at them before the meeting. Does that
Thank you.
sound all right? Okay.
Well, and that's maybe a question for the committee. So with the additional money coming in from Schlitterbahn Vacation Village. We have a letter about that in our packet, and we very briefly talked about it last committee meeting. Last committee meeting, we said, well, let's just see how hard it is to come to a compromise on the process that we have, and that may play into whether we want to come up with a separate process for these other dollars or not. So I think the question tonight for us to decide is, do we want to have this discussion tonight amongst just us, or do we think it would be more beneficial to wait till we're in a full commission setting to have that discussion, since the rest of the commission may not even be aware that these funds are coming? Commissioner Kane.
I know that most of them don't know. And since that's different monies that we've never had before, I think that's something for the full commission to decide on one of the 5 o'clock nights. Yeah, because we make a decision, because I think we know where we want our money to go. We don't know where they want their money to go. If they don't want to spend it, we will.
I just want to be clear, this was a one-time
Right.
distribution. We'll be getting annual appropriations after that.
But it'd be a lot
So-
less than that.
Yes. Yeah, this is, yeah, you won't see this again.
Right, right.
So anyways, it's unique, and so I think there's two ways to, I mean, we have 2 annual appropriations coming in now from two corporations, so.
The only thing I would tell you is that eventually we need to publish the letter. You know, we haven't specifically talked about what their recommendations are, but I think we need to say those eventually in our meeting, okay? We don't need to talk about that right now. Let's save that for our meeting, you know.
Commissioner King.
And I agree. You know, we always put out the bad. We need to put out some good. This is a unique situation. Once all the commission has its opportunity to talk about it, I think we need to put that on our webpage.
Right. I agree.
Okay. Do you want that letter to Commissioner, are you saying to put that letter out early before to the commissioners, or?
Once all the commissions had a chance to look at it, talk about it, you know, because that's a positive thing coming from Schlitterbahn, you know, and like you said, it's a one-time thing. But I think the rest of the commission should know what's going on before we, as a subcommittee, say, hey, we know about this and you don't, we put it out.
Yeah, we don't want to publish the letter before it's made, before everybody's looked at it, and then we can talk to it.
I agree exactly with Commissioner Kane, and I think this showed up once in our packet at our last standing
Yes,
committee
correct.
meeting. However, it should be distributed to the full commission prior to the February 4 special session, so everyone can see the letter itself and the dollar amounts involved, and I think it needs to be a part of that special session discussion, because it could end up being $750,000 or $150,000, you know, depending on the recommendations they've made, I guess, in terms of what gets added to the casino grant fund is where I'm headed, so, thank you.
I agree.
Thank you for that, guys. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Additional comments on this process, and I do appreciate this committee's patience. You know, we don't usually send things to the special session setting, but I just feel like it would be a waste of our time to duke it out here and come up with an exact recommendation when we know that there are significant differing opinions for the other 5 commissioners as well. So I think we've done some good discussion here. I think we're putting forward at least an idea that we can have discussion on as a full commission, and I think at this point that's probably the best we can do without putting forth wasted time and effort. So I appreciate everyone's work on that. All right. Any other questions? You have at least a concept of where we're headed?
I think I'm good to go.
Good. All right. That was our last item, folks. So this concludes our meeting. Thank you for your attendance, and we are adjourned. And please drive safely, everyone.